Mama's Learning Corner, and I really appreciate you stopping back by my channel today. Today I'm talking homeschool, and we're going to be doing a flip through of curriculum. Sometimes I'm in my kitchen, sometimes I talk a little bit about parenting, but today's a homeschool day. So I'm going to be sharing with you a look through the Memoria Press grade 6 literature package, and it contains 4 books that you read throughout the year. And then I'll also give you a glimpse at their at the poetry readings that are included with that package. Okay, so let's take a look. Included in the Memoria Press grade 6 literature package are these 4 titles, including the teacher's guide and the student guides that go with them. And they're read in the order of Adam of the Road, and then The Door in the Wall, The Adventures of Robin Hood, and then King Arthur. And then sprinkled throughout the whole year are selections from Poetry for the Grammar Stage. And this is actually a text that they use, I think it's 3rd grade through 7th grade. It might be 4th. But there's different selections of it sprinkled throughout each and every year of their elementary school. And so there's a few selections for 6th grade, and I'll show those to you in just a minute. But I'd like to show you the teachers and the student edition and then the novel for each book and what those look like. For this curriculum flip through, we're going to start with Adam of the Road, only because that's first in their scheduling series. And of course, you could do them in any order you want to. You could only do Adam of the Road and then do something else for literature if you so choose. These can easily stand on their own. They don't build on one another. And that's one reason I do like this particular curriculum in that way. So Adam of the Road, here's just a flip through the text. There's some pictures sprinkled throughout. Very, very readable text. The chapters are not terribly long. The way this is paced is you read a chapter a day, typically. Yeah, so there's a few interesting pictures throughout. And here's an inside look at the study guide, but I'll show you the teacher's guide in depth because it's similar to the study guide. Now, my daughter has already completed this. This is what we did at the beginning of the year. So this is her handwriting that's in the book. There's the same sections that are in most Memoria Press literature grades for their elementary and middle school. They call it lower school. There's always reading notes. There's a vocabulary section. There's comprehension questions. There's discussion questions. And then there's an enrichment section with almost all of them. Let's see. So sometimes for the enrichment section in Adam of the Road, it's looking at some of the poetry. It's writing in complete sentences in answer to a different type of question. Sometimes it's summarizing a portion of the story. Sometimes it's reading about certain things that happened during this time period. And of course, like other Memoria Press materials, the teacher guide pages are going to be the same as the student guide, except overlaid with the answers, of course. But let's start at the beginning for the teacher's guide for Adam of the Road. So this particular one has 23 chapters, and this is a book you need to move along at a clip because it can kind of get boring if you don't move along pretty steadily. You can get kind of lost in the weeds in it a little bit, but it's an excellent story. But my advice is to clip along with it. So typically this is assigned a chapter a day. You can see that there's quizzes, and that's included in the back. I'll show them to you. This particular teacher's guide and student guide include a glossary of the terms. And then there's answers, of course, to the discussion questions. So this is very typical beginning of a Memoria Press literature guide. There's helps for the parent and how to go through this, go through each section with your child and how to get the most out of it. Here's maps that are used in the enrichment section. And then this is a look at the vocabulary and the introductory page. Comprehension questions, it tells you exactly what to read in the introduction of the book, and this is based on that. There's discussion questions that are literally discussed aloud with your child. And then there's an enrichment section. This one is to use the map and to read about the author. And then we'll just look at chapter 1. Again, reading notes that are important to understanding the fundamental of the story. Vocabulary that my child completes herself. The comprehension questions, and these are what we will go over in her class time. And then discussion questions. It often includes a quotation and who is being spoken to or about. And then an enrichment section. I often and I often assign the enrichment sections, but not always. And here's just a look at chapter 2. Very similar style. The comprehension questions mostly are to guide understanding about the story in the 6th grade, but and then these discussion questions tend to be more, Socratic style questions. But I do want to show you. So this is part of the appendix section. It has a page on meter and rhyme because there's some poetry included in the front of the text and how to analyze that. And those are just really good helps if you haven't done much poetry with your students. Here's a couple of the poems that are included in this, and you'll find the assignments for those in the enrichment. This is a glossary where they complete those vocabulary terms. They can turn back here and use this. There's also answers to the discussion questions. These are for parents. So if you haven't read the book or if you just aren't sure what kind of answer they're looking for. So it's these discussion questions here, and then you turn to the corresponding chapter and you can read their answers. Lastly, included in the teacher's guide is the test, the blank test that you can copy on your printer at home. Or if you order directly from Memoria Press, you get these included in a free download. So there's a download section in your account. You just log into your account, click and print. That makes it so easy. I love this aspect of Memoria Press. So this one has several quizzes. It also has a final. Often an essay is included in the final or a midterm. And then, of course, there's the answers to the questions in the back of the book. So very typical Memoria Press style. Okay, our next book is The Door in the Wall, and this is a much shorter read. In fact, out of the 4 books, this is the shortest. It goes pretty speedy. So you can see that they combine a couple of chapters in this one, and then there's an appendix with a couple of poems and also those discussion questions. But Door in the Wall, there's a few pictures scattered throughout, not a ton. There's maybe 1 per chapter. And this is just such a beautiful little read. Oh, this is just so good. Excellent little sweet story. And this is the student guide. I'm showing you a picture of it. And let's take a peek at the inside. So the same typical page to help you guide your student in how to complete the work. And then the reading notes, of course, that helps in understanding of the plot, helps in understanding of the setting. Memoria Press does a really good job in 6th grade and further about introducing literary devices and pointing those out and drawing attention to them and having your child practice them. So typical reading notes and then the vocabulary, the comprehension section. This one has a separate quotation from the discussion questions. This is, she wrote, but no clue. I just realized she wrote that to her answer. What does the speaker mean by this? And she wrote, I've but no clue. Great. Okay, so we'll go back and review that one. Discussion questions, and then the enrichment on this is oftentimes reading about some aspect of the times. You can see that's the case here with chapter 2 and 3. I don't often have her do the copy work because she does some other handwriting and copy work, so I typically skip that for enrichment, but she often does the other sections. And so let's take a look at the teacher's guide. Okay, so it's going to be the same here. And I'm going to flip to the back and show you, here are the poems that they reference in the enrichment. And also here are the discussion questions. So again, they're just grouped by chapter. You find the chapter you're on if you need help with the answers. And Door in the Wall only has 2 quizzes and tests. It only has 2 total. There's a midterm after chapter 7, and then there's a final exam that just covers the last half of the book. And then, of course, there's the answer key. Before I show you the last 2 books, I want to explain where I get the lesson plans for these. I go ahead and buy the curriculum manual for each grade that I'm doing. I don't use all of the pieces, but this is really handy to have all the plans in one place. I find this just to be really helpful. So this one is for the 6th grade, and you can see the literature selection is here. Okay, so these are the 4 books that we're going to read for that. And then week by week, I go to the literature selection, and this is what I'm doing Monday. This is what I'm doing Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. and then it starts all over. That's what I'm going to do the next several weeks. Now, I don't abide by this to the T, but I follow it pretty closely because I feel like the pacing is very appropriate. And you can download just this literature selection from Memoria Press without having to buy the whole guide. I feel like it's $5 or $6. But well worth it if you need help with the pacing of how to pace those 4 books and also intersperse the poetry in there as well. Scheduled next in grade 6 literature for Memoria Press is The Adventures of Robin Hood. And my daughter has just finished Door on the Wall, and we're going to start Robin Hood next week. So this is a brand new guide, brand new to her. And so it uses the Roger Lenslin Green version of The Adventures of Robin Hood. And I'll show you just a quick peek at it. Not as many pictures, although there's a few interspersed in between. But the text is very, very manageable for middle school. Very manageable. Reads very well. Not too hard, not too easy. I feel like for this grade level, they do a very good job of choosing just the right books. So let's take a look at the student guide. Let me open up to the beginning. And so this one also has 24 chapters. 3 of the 4 are much longer reads, so you kind of need to move along so you don't get lost in the weeds in the middle of it. So this one has an intro, 24, and then an epilogue. And then these introductory pages, of course. Excellent introduction on the historical context, a little bit about the author. Memoria Press does a very good job of that, not just throwing you into the book, but giving you a few easy details to help get you on your way without it being too much, I think. Okay, so as you can see, very typical style. This particular section is on the prologue. So the reading notes to give you some background and give you full understanding, the vocabulary, the comprehension questions, the quotation section, discussion that you'll do with your student, and then the enrichment. So this first one, of course, involves using a map that's in the appendix. And then the second one says, describe the scene depicted in the chapter's illustration. So I really like those types of prompts. Overall, I don't care for this enrichment section for Robin Hood as much as some of the others, simply because a lot of it is act out the scene between character A and character B. And I just find that a little bit difficult in a homeschool setting. It'd be great in a classroom. But I do like, for example, this one, rewrite the story as if you were Much the Miller's son. So those types of exercises are perfect for our family. But you might have little actors and actresses that love the acting out too. So there's just a little bit for everyone. Okay, so this is a look at the student guide. And then let's take a look at the teacher's guide. Okay, so pretty typical. We see that there's several things in the appendix we're going to take a look at, and the quizzes and the tests are in the back of the book. Of course, you can use those downloads, like I said. These are just notes that I leave myself for the next child that's going to go through this. This will be the third of my 5 that has gone through grade 6. Okay, and of course, in the teacher's guide, I get the same information as the student guide, except that the answers are overlaid. Excellent. Okay, so let's take a look back here in the back. This is in the appendix section. So the maps are in the appendix in this one, and then there's enrichment activities assigned using the maps. And then this one also has a glossary, which is really convenient. Here's the answers to the discussion questions that are in each lesson with your child, if you haven't read the book. Although I will suggest that you read the book. It's so much easier to discuss if you're not scrambling, for answers. It's just a more rich discussion if you can. And also, there's quizzes and tests in the back. To my knowledge, I feel like we've been through every literature selection in Memoria Press, pretty much through almost 12th grade. And I think this is the only one with a crossword puzzle to test on the vocabulary. Multiple choice facts to know, a section on quotations, and then multiple choice questions. So that's what a quiz looks like. And of course, there's a section behind it with the answers. These come straight from the quotations that you do for each section. So no surprises on the test. And I always go through the test with my children just to make sure they understand where they are to get their answers and what are the most important points of the book. All right, this last book in the Memoria Press Grade 6 literature is King Arthur and His Knights of the Round Table. Such an excellent read. Again, they're using the green version like they did with Robin Hood. Very readable and accessible to middle school students. Few pictures scattered throughout, but just excellent, just excellent. I've been so very pleased with the versions that they've chosen. So let's take a peek at the student guide. Since this is the last selection, my daughter hasn't gotten to that yet. It's more towards the end of the year. And you can see that the table of contents is divided by chapters again, of course, but this particular book has book 1, book 2, book 3, book 4, which makes the dividing of it easier. That same help at the beginning for parents. There's a map that is used in the enrichment, a family tree about the author and the illustrator. Just little details that are important to get the full picture of the literature selection that they've chosen. So you'll see that there's almost always a quotation here, and they pull the same one here. So reading notes, vocabulary, comprehension questions, that quotation section which pulls from here, discussion questions, and then enrichment. So there's a little bit more writing in this enrichment. Some of it's, of course, just reading about history of the time. So this is more essay style suggestions. Here's a copywork suggestion. Find examples in this chapter of characters adhering to the code of chivalry. Write those down. So excellent, very worthy assignments if you are able to get to them. We're not always able to get to them because the questions, they take a while and they take a lot of thought and effort. So oftentimes we don't get to the writing portions of the enrichment, but I'm so happy when they do, when we're able to, because they're just incredibly valuable. So let's take a look at the teacher's guide, and it's going to be the same of course. Actually, let me go ahead and flip to the back because you know what this part's going to look like, right? There's an overlay of possible answers for the enrichment. Of course, there's an overlay of the comprehension questions. In this appendix portion, there's a small glossary. And then, of course, there's the discussion questions that you do for each section. And then we'll take a look at the quizzes. So this one has a word bank. Most of them do have a word bank. If they don't, I just go ahead and type up a quick list of vocabulary words from the section, so they don't have to pull those from their brain. So this one has a word bank, short answer section, multiple choice, quotations that you've studied and gone over, then some comprehension questions that are going to be straight from their lessons. Yeah, and more of the same, more of the same. The last thing that I want to quickly show you is Poetry for the Grammar Stage, which pulls some of the poems from this time period. And again, I think they use this either 3rd or 4th through 7th grade with Memoria Press. So you can see that there's several of these. They coordinate them with the books that they are reading, and sometimes they're coordinated with science for those younger grades. So The Barefooted Friar will read. It goes with Robin Hood. There's a couple for Adam of the Road. There's another one for Robin Hood, one for King Arthur. So we will read through those. I'll show you a quick glance at what that looks like. Let's look at The Barefooted Friar because she's going to work on it next week. It's on page 74. Okay, so this is the teacher's edition. However, it gives you, I'll show you the next page, which is where the answers are. So here's the poem at the top. There's a copybook space to copy the poem. There's a section to illustrate it if you'd like. And then there's a vocabulary section at the top, harder words in the poem, just so you understand their meanings. And then there's an analyzation section. What is the rhyming structure? What is the refrain? And then oftentimes they reprint the poem here so you can easily analyze those sections. And then the comprehension questions. And those are typically a little harder and they need a lot of help. So we often do those orally. So like this one, what is a friar? Well, she can look that up herself in the dictionary. But then it'll have little sections. What does this section mean? To whom is the friar compared? How does he fare in comparison? So those types of things, yes. Every once in a while, though, there will be more difficult phrases of the poem that are hard to interpret. So we do a lot of that out loud together. So she'll do 2 or 3 out of this book this year. The big one that she memorized with Adam of the Road was England's Sovereigns in Verse, and it is a beast. But boy, it is so worthy. It is so worthy of knowing England's Sovereigns in Verse. That is really good. In fact, I'm doing world history with my older kids, my big kids in high school. And what an excellent skeleton of reference this gives you for England and their kings and queens. So I love that it gives you this vocabulary, but then it gives you a whole history of the English monarchy here. Really, really helpful. It does not have a copybook page or those types of things, or an analyzation page, just because this poem is so in-depth and intense. But she memorized it over about 4 weeks, and she still recites it to me on most Fridays, just so she can keep it fresh in her brain. But this was an assignment from Adam of the Road that we chose, an enrichment assignment that we chose to do. So please let me know if you'd like to see more flip-throughs. I have a lot of most Memoria Press. I have a lot of BJU. I have a lot of Rod and Staff in grammar and in math and a little bit of science. And I also have some other curriculum pieces that you might have interest in. So if you like this flip-through style of looking at items that you can't actually have in your hands, I'm happy to do those. Leave me a comment below. I'd also love for you to subscribe or hit like on this video, because then more of my videos will show up in your feed, and I appreciate that. Thank you. And lastly, I'll make sure I link to everything in the description so you can find these yourself if you're interested in using this curriculum with your own children. Okay, thank you. I appreciate you watching today.